the amendment of constitution and utilizing the power of the authority is a illegitimate action that actually abuses the human rights, and we think that we can't tolerate this proposal, tolerate South Africa to propose this motion, and we think that violent rebellion, in this case, the legitimate action. Therefore, we would like to support and we would like to stand as a affirmative side. First, I want to explain how South Africa is actually taking a legitimate action, and second, I want to explain why violent rebellion is a legitimate action in this case. And the burden of proof of the government side is that why it is legitimate to take action. Even if we can actually, well, it's the declaration. So in the first place, that it still remains a possibility. But the most heaviest burden in our side of the house is that we have to why the violent rebellion itself is a legitimate action, even though there is maybe some of the procedures that may cause harm. So okay. First, I'm going to explain why is it legitimate in South Africa taking a legitimate action in the first place. So firstly, we think that yes, beforehand, yes.
The motion should talk about in the interest of the white group in South Africa. Why the legitimate action is quite important in your side?
White group. Well, that's integrated in my speech. So, well, yeah, white group. The interest of, I'm going to explain in my speech. So firstly, we think that the South Africa, South Africa is actually, this is very marginalizing the white people. In the first place, that the white farmer is a minority in South Africa. 80% are mostly black people, and that's why they remains as a minority. And the opposition might say that, well, they are the descendants of illegitimate action during the colonization. But we think that those descendants should not take those burden in the first place. In the first place, they are like already paying the tax, paying for the tax, and they are already given the citizenship. They should actually treat it as an equality. But it is this actually South Africa proposing the virtually significant damages towards the white farmers, right? White farmers cannot produce some of the products they want to produce. They can't have the income. They will lose a lot of things in order to pay for the children's education, right? And this is totally unfair in the first place. We think that what we would like to support in the first place is that the seizure with the compensation. We like to as a white group, we think that they have to oppose the seizure without the compensation. We think because the seizure itself is legitimate because it can balance out the public welfare as well as the public welfare, but the compensation is necessary in order to actually balance out the private or individual human rights. And if it's not, when they do not pay the compensation, we think it's just a robbery that utilizing the authority of the government. So why the action itself is a legitimate action? And we think, in the first place, that the violent rebellion itself is not that something that utilized so often in the first place. We think that it increases the incentive to the government to stop the amendment itself, because we think that it actually costs the citizens, and it may cost a lot of citizens to actually gain. It may going to have like economical disadvantage or something like that. But that's why that the citizens do not allow the amendment in order to protect their citizens' life. That's why that it's a strong incentive to stop stop the amendment. Citizens will vote against that against the constitution. But even if the violent rebellion that actually implemented, we think this is legitimate. Why? In the first place, it is the only way, and we think that it is a self-defense that we have to recognize. Why? We think that this amendment of the constitution is a very radical action that the government actually taking, right? And we think that the constitution oftentimes actually amended by majority, and it actually marginalizes a lot of minorities. When they actually they use this petition, and they actually marginalizes a lot of minorities. And we think that the constitution is something that ultimate power of the government, right? That it actually stands the highest places of the government, and including it's actually that's why we think that the amendment of the Constitution itself is a violation. It's using the power of the authority that actually abusing the human rights of the white workers. And we think that in that kind of cases that the self-defense is the legitimate action in order to actually tackle down those violent actions got implemented by the government. Furthermore, it is the only way that, as I said, that because they remain as a minority, they can't actually voice out, they can't actually vote against the amendment itself. That is why saying that the violent rebellion, the formation of the violent rebellion is a legitimate action, the legitimate declaration, we think, and that is why we think that it should be done in it should be actually it's legitimate action, and that we should say South Africa should recognize it is should recognize. And so what do we have proof to you in this proposal? We think that in the first place, South Africa without compensation, we think this is a totally illegitimate action. It's actually abusing the property of white workers and white women, and we think that it should be done with a compensation in the first place. And we think that the violent rebellion in this case should be the legitimate action, and therefore we are proud to propose this motion.
I thank the previous speaker for his speech. To introduce the opposition case, I'd like to call upon the leader of the opposition. Hear, hear.
Thank you, Chair. This motion is not relevant whether this action is legitimate or not. If this action is bad for the white group in the South Africa, this motion is a failure. Government side argument is to say whether what is the practical consequence after taking this one. We don't know such kind of things. However, this is legitimate, so we should take this motion. However, ladies and gentlemen, as the white groups in the South Africa, we should in this motion we should talk about the interest of the white groups. This motion is good for the white group in the practically good for the white group in the South Africa or not. That's the reason why we oppose. Firstly, in my speech, firstly I explain why the declaration of such kind of the formation of the violent rebellion is make some violent backlash from the some radical black group in the South Africa, and also lose the opportunity to negotiate or the compromise with some not so radical black people who have the incentive to not so radical groups in the not so radical black groups. And secondly, explain why in our side of the house, without the declaration of such kind of things, we can peacefully negotiate with some not so radical black groups, and it contribute to stop some amendment of the constitution. So before moving to my argument, let me clarify our stance. Of course, we think as a white groups, we should stop the amendment of the constitution. However, we don't use such kind of the violent way towards the black peoples. We negotiate or the compromise with the not so radical groups in the South Africa, and through such kind of the process, we make the large number of the party to stop the some amendment of the constitution, and try to stop the amendment of the constitution. So moving to my argument. Firstly, what kind of the what kind of the people in the South Africa we think that of course certain actually the certain number of the black in South Africa has some radical ideas towards the white groups because they are colonized by they have the strong antipathy towards the colonization of the whites in the historically, or they forced to obey they think they are forced to obey the white in the past. So in such kind of things they have the strong antipathy to the white peoples basically. So, however, ladies and gentlemen, on the other hand, a certain number of the people have the not so such kind of the radical. Certain number of the black don't have the not such kind of the radical ideas. They also think like see the land of the white without a compensation is not a good thing, or so forth. Such kind of people exist actually. So, on having this context, we think that such kind of declaration has a quite harm to the white groups. Why is that so? Because of course some kind of the radical blacks based on their antipathies, they seek the opportunity to attack to the certain white groups. So we think such if we use some violent way to stop the attainment of the constitution, they can have the justification to violently attack to the white groups. No, thank you. Because they use such kind of violent way, that's why we violently attack to them. This is a justifiable things they can think. Like we think in such situation, of course, the conflict between the white groups and the radical groups are so accelerated, and such kind of conflict is quite harm to the white groups. So, and also yes.
Do you really believe in your paradigm the black radicalists don't have any justification or any rhetoric to attack them? This is your paradigm.
We think that such kind of this motion is not so not say that such kind of legitimacy is whether the legitimacy is exist or not. We think the practical consequence is rather important to think about this. So. Why in their side of the house we lose the opportunity to negotiate or the compromise with some not so radical black parties. Of course, such kind of the black party or as a member of the black parties, they have they feel the integration to the some black parties. However, that in such situations, if the conflict between the white groups and the radical groups are accelerated, they of course lose the opportunity to negotiate or the compromise with the white groups, because if so, they are also get targeted by the radical blacks or like you are enemy or or so on. We think such kind of situation is quite harmful also to the white groups. However, ladies and gentlemen, in our side of the house, if we don't declare the formation of the violent rebellion against the government, we think that such kind of we can compromise or we can negotiate with such kind of not so radical black parties, because they can have the incentive to negotiate with us. They doesn't targeted by the radical black parties, because in our side of the house, such kind of conflict doesn't accelerate it, and comparatively, there is a high possibility to success such kind of negotiation or the compromise. Basically, they think that without compensation, the seizure of the land of the white is not good thing. We think that such kind of negotiation will highly likely to be success. That's the reason why our stance is better.
I thank the previous speaker for his speech. To further extend their case, I'd like to call upon the DPM. Here.
Thank you, Chairperson. Ever since Nelson Mandela won the election back in the 1990s, we believe that the African National Congress was trying to promote like the peace inside which this country, which suffered a lot from the separation known as apartheid, right? However, we believe what South Africa is doing right now, we believe is something legit, and we believe it's not actually promoting peace. Rather, we're actually going to some sort of dictatorship by these kinds of black people. Opening opposition told you that. Look, we have other kinds of methods to actually promote, to actually stop these kinds of amendments of this kind of constitution. But we believe we hear no logic coming from the opening opposition, how it's going to be achievable. We're going to prove to you how these kinds of white group people taking the violent rebellion actions, we believe can make the change. We're very happy to propose. 2 points I want to look at. Firstly, I'll talk about why do these kinds of white groups have to actually take such violent rebellions? Why is it necessary? I'll talk about it firstly. Secondly, let me compare with both sides, which side is actually better and realistic in achieving the changes that we want. Because we believe we share the goal, and we believe the goal is same, right? Because we want to stop these kinds of actions of these kinds of South Africa trying to amend this kind of constitution. We're going to prove to you why our side is going to be more achievable. All my refutes are integrated. So let me move. So firstly, what's the necessity, right? So who are these white group people in South Africa today, right? Yes, we believe there are once like the dominant people, dominance in South Africa and oppress these kinds of black people by implementing language regulations or taking away certain amounts of land. But we believe that is now over, right? And we believe that is now over, and we believe. Now, South Africa is trying to promote a better liberal democratic country. That's why we have elections, and that's why they are trying to, rebuild their country and more. Now, as a democratic country, we believe yes, the blacks are leading now over having 80% of the amounts consisting their country, and the white people are the minorities, right? So, what is South Africa trying to do today or in this motion right now? So we believe those kinds of South Africa is trying to take advantage of their autonomy, having more people in the democracy and the whole country, and trying to change and amend the constitutions to take in their advantage, right? Because look, what they're trying to do by taking away land and not compensating is just trying to it's just literally robbery and just taking away land and property from your citizens, right? We could see that's how that is allowed, right? Because already international law says that you can just take away things. You have to give certain amounts of compensation, thank you, to when you actually take away things. But we believe just South Africa is going to go against these kinds of laws, and moreover, it's going against these kinds of international law in the first place. Moreover, they're just actually robbing the property from the citizens who don't have stronger political powers compared to the majorities. No, thank you. We believe this is incorrupt, and we believe that is why these kinds of we believe that is not what it's not fair for these kinds of white people. Moreover, we believe it's not good as South Africa trying to promote the democratic into their country and trying to rebuild, right? So we believe that's the necessity we have to take, and that's why we believe these kinds of white people need to take such actions in order to create the change. Before I move on, yes.
Okay, when there are already international law, what is the likelihood of South Africa abusing this law to the extent of human rights will be violated?
So yeah, so we believe they need to actually realize that these kinds of change, actually going against and abusing is actually harmful, and we believe that's why they're not actually following it. We need to make them realize that they need to follow, right? So why is this going to be achievable? Let me compare both sides in today's debate in the opening half, right? So opening opposition basically told us that there are such non-radical ways that exist to actually negotiate, for example, negotiate with the governments, right? But firstly, we couldn't see what's the logic behind this, right? How are we actually going to negotiate? What's the likelihood of these kinds of black people actually stopping these kinds of creating these kinds of laws, right? Moreover, we believe these kinds of negotiations are never going to work and occur in the first place, right? Because look, as I told you, these kinds of South Africa is consisted fully of these kinds of black people, and we believe those kinds of white people are only consist maybe 10% of the whole population, meaning that we believe those kinds of black people, like really, literally do not have to care about these kinds of white people or these kinds of like very small minorities, because we believe it doesn't really actually affect to their elections or the, elections and more the policy making or those kind of things, right? So we believe that's not workable. Moreover, we believe because as the opening opposition was trying to tell us, there are some people who are not so radical, but that also says there are people who are radical. We believe those kinds of people use those kinds of cases of apartheid and use it as a rhetoric and say these kinds of white people are not worth actually thinking of. They were once violent and taking away these kinds of lands, and we believe that's why we cannot actually consider that. We believe there are politicians who actually use these kinds of cases as a rhetoric, so those kinds of other black people or the whole populations will actually go against these kinds of white people, and we believe that's not okay, right? So why by taking violent rebellion actions can we actually make the change, right? So by taking such action, not maybe peaceful negotiation, but rather doing demonstrations and those kind of things, is more effective in two ways. Firstly, we believe it actually affects the inside the countries or the inside of South Africa. Those kind of people who are not maybe we don't say all people will consider those kinds of white people situations, but because as the opening opposition already conceded, we have people there are people who are not as radical as much, right? Those kinds of people will actually think and realize that what the government is doing is something illicit. We need to rethink about these kinds of white groups and what the what the government actually doing. That's why we think those kind of people will think and actually voice out to these kinds of politicians to actually change. Moreover, we believe because these kinds of South Africans, because it's such violent action, we believe that's going to be broadcast to the whole world, right? Through media and through SNS and those kind of things, right? So we believe those kinds of things will actually make other people in other countries recognize, and we believe those kind of people can actually pressurize South Africa to not do such thing, not do violent discrimination, or not do such thing that goes against the laws. We believe because we're actually because it's such violent action, we believe it actually creates more attention that actually can pressurize these kinds of governments to actually change. We believe we're the one who actually showed you the actual change that can actually only occur through these kinds of violent rebellions. We're very happy to propose.
I thank the previous speaker for his speech. To close the opening debate, I'd like to call upon the VLO. Here.
The motion is irrelevant that the white group has already spoken about it. But opening up to spend a lot of time to the take why this violation action can be justified. That's why we say the goodbye the opening government. So we think that motion itself. So whether the political this particular practical consequence is an interest for the white people. If this violent action is so bad for in the white group, we think that we have to think this motion is not interest for the white people. So two things must be why. Firstly, the which paradigm can stop the amending the constitution. Secondly, why this declaration of the violence is bad for the long time in the South Africa. So firstly, they say that their assumption is that this violation action is so successful to stop amending the constitution. But it's not true. According to their characterization, in the South Africa, this white people is a minority people. The 20% is the white people, and 80% is the black people in the first place. Such that this violation doesn't succeed in to the tackle down to the black people, right? Because also the ruling party is consists of the black people. Such that it's easily tackle down to the white people in the first place. That's even though they can declaration of the violence, also this ruling party has the justification to tackle down to the white people by using the army, by using the other policy in the first place. Such things they also these white people also get uninterested in the first place. Why our side of the house, that kind of white people doesn't get the uninterested? Because also even in the ruling party don't have the justification to use this army in the first place. Because once they use the army, also many international society or other people also criticize that kind of ruling party in the first place. Sometimes this population of this ruling party is a decline in the first place, right? That's why, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, as long as they don't have the justification, they don't have the justify to tackle down to this white party. That's why, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, this violation doesn't succeed in their side of the house. Yes.
This motion just said a declaration. It does not necessarily mean automatically violence. You have to engage this point in the first place.
I think that the declaration is said, if you say we do this, we do the violence, it means that before doing the violence, we have the justification to tackle down this point. Because if they also we doesn't do it, also many possibility to be done by the violence. That's why this also even just the declaration, this ruling party has the justification to attack this black people, white people. So. Firstly, which paradigm can stop the amending the constitution? The question from the closing argument is why we can stop the radical group in the South Africa to stop the amending the constitution. So we think that the motion is not talking about the only two actors. Firstly, the ruling party and the white group. We think that also the other actor exists in the South Africa or international society. For example, Mr. Speaker, even South Africa, sometimes also black people also support for the white people. Not only the black people, for the always the oppress the black people in the white people in the first place. Because Mr. Speaker, sometimes also white people can cooperate with the black people by the job, by in the many friends in the first place. That's why also even in the South Africa, many number of the black people also can be the friend with the white people in the first place. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, if we can also gather the sympathy for the black people, sometimes we can stop to the amending the constitution by the ruling party in the first place. Sorry, sister, please. Why this? Why that kind of action? What kind of action the white group can take by in our side of the house? Firstly, we can negotiate to the ruling party. Please compensate me if you want to seizure of the land. Because also these white people can gather, also make the rhetoric. Also the ruling party is unreasonably deprived our land. Such as many numbers of people also sympathize with these white people. At least they say we have to compensate these white people in the party. Sorry, sister, please. That's Mr. Speaker. At least their side of us, we can. These white people can have the possibility to have the interest of from the ruling party. Secondly, even though this negotiation is also the force, also that we can gather the sympathy for the other community in the first place. Because in the 21st century, also we have the way to spread this opinion many kind of the society. For example, in the SNS, for example, in the public speech, we can please help. In the ruling party is automatically oppress these white people. Also, we don't never do this violence, but the ruling party also oppress this white party. Sometimes also this kind of actor, this ruling party is automatically become the evil actor, right? That's Mr. Speaker. Sometimes many number of people want to gather the sympathy to the white people. That's why sometimes also ruling party is pressurized by the international society. They have to stop amending the constitution. Sorry. So secondly, why this declaration of the violence is bad for the long term? So violent action is basically bad image for the third party. Reason why the people are very careful for the violent action. For example, many people all around the world criticize ISIS, criticize honor killing, even without knowing the background, because they are so sensitive to the violent action, right? Even though the government paradigm, if once this violent action is succeed in to stop the amending constitution, but actually in the long term, also they have the two possibility to the amending once or gather the enemy for the white people in the party. So please. Reason why my assertion is one: the ruling party can gather many people who have antipathy for the white people. Reason why the ruling party also utilize the rhetoric. the white group is so radical, the white group is so violent, the white group is the enemy for the black people. Because also we never do the violence, but the white group also declare all the violence, right? That time also they have a justification to help themselves. It means that many numbers of black people feel the sense of the self-defense. Sometimes the black people want to have the antipathy to the white people, right? That's why even though in the temporary, this amending the constitution is a stop, but in the long term, also this ruling party gathers a many number of people. Also, they cannot be uncontrollable. Also, they do this amending the constitution. That kind of the practical harm is also even only their side of house. But actually, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, also this ruling party never use the rhetoric. This white people is so violent. That's at least our side of house. We can have the possibility to achieve the peaceful achievement for the white people. For those reasons, we believe that only our side, the white group, can have the benefit. Thank you.
I thank the previous speaker for his speech. To extend their case, I'd like to call upon the member of the government.
What we think lack from the opening hall is, first of all, what's at stake for those white people? How much incentive and motive do they really have? What do they have to lose in this case? We're going to bring you from CG. But furthermore, we cannot tell you on a practical basis a clear mechanism, what's to achieve and what's the importance of that from the CG, because that was never talked about from the OG. Those are the two things we bring to you. But before I move on to these 2 points, 2 refutations to these opening opposition. First, they say that really the mechanisms are, well, people will sympathize, we should rather work towards black people, persuade them to help us. First of all, we believe that's a total jump in this mechanism. Just because even if you get that sympathy of the people, how does it connect to the government changing legislation to such things, right? But furthermore, we believe it might also be happening before the next election or something like that in the first place. So it's an urgent issue. In such cases, their argument is of non-importance. But furthermore, we believe that people don't really care that much about those white people, right? Obviously, they might be sympathizing, but on the other hand, their ancestors have taken our land. They might not be hostile, but that's a big jump to say sympathize. If they sympathize a bit, they will take active action to actually help you. We believe it's really unrealistic what they're proposing on their paradigm. But furthermore, and the second point, no thank you, is about negotiations. They're saying they will have justifications to crack down with armed forces. We believe that's totally unrealistic. Why? Because people are saying, we will do A if you do B. It's not a statement, we will crush you. We say, they give a condition, and then what they would take as an action as a consequence. If you just, if somebody say, if you don't, do what I say, then I will hit you. No, I'm sorry. That was horrible. So, unless you have to negotiate. If they give a condition, they give a condition but you don't really negotiate them and you just crush them, that does give you no justification at all. You just one-sidedly not listening to them and crushing them. So their argument about the justification is unrealistic in our debate as well. So moving on to my first point, what's at stake for those people really? We believe this is really important because the main actor are those white people in South Africa, right? So it's important to know, what's to lose for them. Why would they have to fight in the first place, right? So I think there are 4 things that are to lose. First of all, we believe all the efforts they've put for all these decades, for example, as farmers, but still also other people, for example, in their house, in their fields, to cultivate them, or for example, building their houses, or building their garden, building their property at all. We believe all this effort will go to waste, as much to lose. But furthermore, second of all, redoing all of that is also incredibly hard. For example, as the majority of the white are farmers there, we believe cultivating it takes a lot of time and effort and money, and we believe many of these people will not be able to do so, will not have anything to do to live with. But furthermore, we believe there's ancestral heritage. obviously, yes, the ancestors have done something wrong, but that doesn't change the fact that this person was my father, and this is the thing that I inherited, was my heritage, my legacy that I got from him. But furthermore, we believe, most importantly, is in their paradigm, they will be lost all political power or political stances that these white people can take. Given that they can always take your land unconditionally, without compensation. That is to say, if you say something that the government doesn't like, that the African Congress doesn't like, they can always take your property, meaning there's no real right, no real way for you to go against it. But furthermore, also, we believe now is the only time where you can do so. Stand up and fight for your rights. No, thank you. Why is that? Because now you still have the resources. You still have a shelter and maybe some economic power as the white people in that country. Once they take your property away, once they put you in a position of no power, of no economic power, that means it's a lot more hard and actually to take such an action, to go against those powers and to take a rebellion. So we believe it's a now or never situation for those white peoples in those situations. Now that's why it's so important for these, what's at stake for these people. But second point about the practical mechanism, the achievement that they can potentially get, and what's the importance of that. So one, we believe, why would this deterrence really practically work, is first, the sheer number of people that we have. Yes, there are a minority, but still, if, like, for example, out of the 20%, 10% of the white people would be willing to take arms, or say at least, we will be taking up arms and fight against you with weapons. We believe this will be quite a force for the government, especially because they're scattered all around the country. They're inside the country. It's hard to spot every single one of them. No, thank you. But furthermore, it's not like all black people will stand up against them. Many people are in neutral positions. We don't believe that the army has more than 10% of the whole population, right? So that's why they are quite a threat if they stand up. But furthermore, we believe there's still many wealthy people and that will cooperate with those white people. Why? Because first, there are relatives of those farmers or inside the country, or there are relatives from outside the country that will help you out with monetary help. But furthermore, we believe there's a feeling of such brotherhood. Even if some rich white people in South Africa wouldn't be threatened by this law, still they might feel brotherhood towards those other white people, those white farmers, and might help them out, with monetary help. But furthermore, we believe that just the feeling that those rather privileged white people in South Africa, they might think, now they're going after the farmers, but next they might be coming to me, because now they have the right to take away my property at any time, and they have still maybe some hatred, and they might come after me. That's why there's massive incentive also for the wealthy people to join and help out those forces. Yes, opening.
If some black people can cooperate with the white people, also they can vote against this constitutional amendment.
What comes in consideration? I believe there's not that much active incentive to actually help those people out, right? But furthermore, that's why we say that they're... Yes. So what we can get is a lot of money, but also weapons, etc. in order to fight against. So that's not what we actually do, but we can say we do, and that's a threat that they might, that they know if we declare, I would actually have power to go against them, which is a deterrence towards their side. So why does it have to be that violent power to appeal against them? First of all, it's very instinctual, right? If it's violent, that you might want to protect yourself, right? If they come with a gun after you, or your family, or other people, obviously you would not want to not go that path, right? But the government obviously not just only cares about this thing, but also about the economy and other kind of criteria in their thing, right? So this is obviously tremendously bad towards the economy and towards the whole stability of the country, because there would be warfare for years to come, right? But furthermore, for those things, well, what we can achieve really is first we can get at least that we can't get any amendment at all, but more likely maybe through these negotiations what we can get is at least maybe get some compensation, at least, even if we can't take that property, at least we can get through negotiations the power to get some compensations which makes it able for us to actually still live and have minimum rights, at least for ourselves. So what we told you from closing government, what's at stake for those people and how they actually can achieve that, so we're proud to propose.
I thank the previous speaker for his speech. To extend the opposition case, I'd like to call upon the member of the opposition. Hear, hear.
when ISIS was wanting to regain the past territory that they had, nobody in the international society supported that because the act of this ISIS was totally illegitimate, illogical. That is why we think when people try to arm themselves based on illegitimate ideology, we think it's oftentimes more likely to fail. But even if it is something legitimate, we think arming yourself is something counterproductive for itself, and that's why we say that even if we say that this amendment is not something ideal, we think violence is not the way to go. So what we're going to be talking about from closing opposition. Firstly, I'm going to be simple fact check because I think it was not that likely realistic scenario, especially in the opening half, which only had a, let's say, logical wonderland. We're going to be putting down to the real world and how we're going to be checking the fact and how it's one, principally justifiable, and two, why that South Africa is not that likely to harm white people to the extent that all closing government wants it to be. But secondly, I'm going to be talking about why in the practical sense that this doesn't work in the way that they try to do. So first, let's go with the fact check, right? So, is it justifiable to do so? We think this is the very premise of opening government. We say that it's actually not. Why? Because one, there are a principal obligation for these people to restore their land. Why? Because one, these people have basically owned their land unjustly in the past. These were the white people who had taken away the land from black people and continue to enslave black people, right? And what the South African government are going to do is to give this land back to the black people, right? What's the problem with this? That is why, even if there are international law to prevent human rights violation, it is still okay for the South Africa to do it. Still, there are international support. Therefore, I think your case is unrealistic. But second, we think this is basically compensation for the poor people because, we understand that white people are minority at 20%, but still they're one of the richest in South Africa, right? And that's why when it comes to comparative, we think this is just recompensating the poor people and saving more poor people. That's why we think this is something legitimate. Why this legitimacy becomes important? Several reasons. Firstly, because when you are doing something illegitimate as a white community, we think you're simply going to lose support. We're talking about example of Poland and EU, right? Because Poland is committing human rights violation and almost about to lose the position in EU. This in itself is extremely harmful. Why losing international support is something harmful? Two reasons. One, because white people is anyway the minority in South Africa, and we think this international support is necessary for white community anyways. But second, South Africa is still a developing country. We think trade is important, economical, empowerment is something important. Therefore, being legitimate in itself is something fundamentally important for the white community. Therefore, we think OG's premise falls, and we don't think that white community is actually legitimate. But second, let's talk about the incentive of South Africa. Here's the thing. Number one, white people, yes, they may lose up some of their property, but they're still one of the richest in South Africa, right? We don't think that closing government's capitalization of these people suffering to the extent that they're talking about is something likely. But more importantly, two, because South Africa don't want to be regarded as an immoral state. We don't think South Africa will abuse this, taking away land to the extent that these people will just suffer and die, right? That's what, and because of the very reason that I have already told you. Because the very thing here is that South Africa is not really just hating white people, right? Because they just wanting to give the land the white people immorally have, just give it back to black people. It's not that they hate white people. Therefore, we don't think that South Africa have an incentive to just hurt the white people in the first place. Therefore, the conclusion of this argument is that there actually not that big necessity for the white people to arm themselves and try to fight against South Africa because the harm is not that big and this is something is tolerable in the first place or something it should rather happen, right? We don't think this is something it's to the extent that they should be doing. But second, let's talk about a counterfactual that we support on our side, which is to say the negotiation that opening opposition have basically talked about. If the closing government think that this declaration is enough for the negotiation, meaning that they can have public support if they declare arms, we think it means the public anyway care about this white community anyways, right? I don't really think that there are meaningful distinction between declaring violence and appealing for the public, because what these people are saying is that my land is unjustly taken away, give it back to me, right? And what's the distinction between arming yourself? You need to tell me why this declaration of violence is uniquely and tremendously different. Because if the difference is marginal, I don't think this is a smart idea today because of the following reasons that I'm going to be talking about. So why this arming yourself is not that likely to success, which is going to be the direct response to what opening government talked about. Firstly, is this likely to succeed in the first place? Because I have told you that the number of the capital is highly different. But in addition to that, what is uniquely extended from closing opposition? We told you that this action is highly immoral, highly illogical, highly illegitimate in the first place. That's why international society are not going to support you anyways, right? That's why we think the premise of closing government is also going to fail. Why is this important? This is important because white people don't have enough power to fight back South African government. We don't think this is likely to success. The conclusion is that when you are going to fail to do so, it means you arm yourself, try to fight against South Africa, Africa, the risk is you're going to lose your life. But if you remain silent, which is to say, just like some of your portion of their lands taken away, I don't think you're gonna die, right? You can continue the ordinary life. I don't think that this risk is something worth taking. That's why we think this possibility of success is something that you need to prove on your side of house. But second, we think the most likely scenario case here is that it becomes a civil war and civil conflict within South Africa, right? Because we don't think the likelihood of this white people trumping this South African government is likely the case. Why is this something problematic? If we look at the example of Congo, we think proxy war situation is something likely to happen because civil war means that there are not strong government inside of South Africa. That is when, number one, because there are natural resources in South Africa, we think there are many of the country around, for example like Taiwan, we think the country around South Africa tried to invade and try to influence the government. No, thank you, no, not now. Invade and influence this government. This is exactly the case of Congo. Even if the United Nations ordered Rwanda and Zimbabwe to go away, Rwanda and Zimbabwe didn't really listen and just continued the rebellion and continued to fight within Congo, right? We think this is something rather prolongs the conflict and it's going to hurt white people and also the South African people. We think this is anyway not going to be beneficial for the white people. And secondly, we think these people are just simply going to die. We think this is something not good. Moving on to the best case of your side, go.
If the government, our South African government, is legitimate to taking up their property in order to restore the black people right, what's the point of caring about international reputations in the first place?
Because it is legitimate to do so, you are completely meeting the international reputation, right? Because you're not doing something immoral. But when you are going to abuse white people, that is when the international reputation are going to be lost. I don't get the point. So, but now, let's engage with the best case scenario of their side of the house. They gain power and arm themselves, and we think the reasonable consequence is one, independence, or two, political recognition maybe. But both of them is likely to fail. One, we think if they are to win the independence, we don't think this is likely to success because the white people don't have that much of the resources or political power because the way how they are going to gain independence is going to be highly immoral. We think this country is going to simply fail. But second, recognition. Even if they got to get this political recognition, basically the majority of the people in the country are not going to support. We're just opening up and said that radical people are going to continue to hate them. We agree, right? But rather, we extended that. Even ordinary people are starting to hate these white people because they are the one who killed them. This exactly happened in example of Colombia. FARC have armed themselves and tried to rebel. And the consequence, they got to have a political party, but the consequence was, nobody voted for this party, right? They didn't even win even one seat within this parliament, right? We think the consequence is they will just be ignored because they are hated. For all that reason, if we were to take their best case scenario, and this armed success is also going to feel harmful. For all that reason, we're very proud.
I thank the previous speaker's speech. To close the government side, I'd like to call upon the government when here.
Thank you, Chairperson. For each speaker from seat contention. First of all, let me clash with closing of operation, whether there is a principal obligation or whether it is a harm not so big for white farmer. It can be the reason to justify the motion from the closing of operation. And second of all, let me explain the comparison. Why how people act when such kind which is bigger, like a potential backlash versus the people try to compromise. Let me analyze this characterization. So finally, let me engage towards opening a portion whether keeping status quo is enough or not. I can explain one by one. So first of all, let me crash towards closing a portion. What they claim is that because international law try to protect the people and so the harm is not so big enough to oppose it. That is so okay. So if we prove such kind of harm for white farmer is extremely big to the extent to be deprivation of the fundamental right which we have to protect from the perspective of international law, we can disconstruct just an argument. Let us prove this point. Two reasons why. First reason why, but my partner has already said so they spend a lot of time to make your farm. It means by sacrificing your own body autonomy, they make body autonomy. We can call it. It's one extension of your body autonomy, the farm in itself. Simply because in the every day, in the every life, every morning, they have to such a care, such a the status of land by such picking up some tree, or picking up some grasses, etc. They every day and every time they care such a situation in no matter how disastrous situation occurs, they have to by themselves, they have to clean up their own farmers. On the occasion, we can call it, this is one extension, your own body autonomy, because this is a result of your own effort, your own body autonomy. Why we can deprive in the first place? No, thank you. More of us can reason why it's so problematic, why we can call it this deprivation of fundamental rights. So we have to analyze the character of farmer in the first place. What they say that, they mispicturize the character of farmer. They are late in the first place. But we are talking about white farmer. Even white people, there are a lot of spectrum. Sometimes people go to be the corporation executive, maybe they are late. We are talking to farmer when they are born in the rural area, they that can grow up their license field, or they cultivate their own land by lacking education maybe, I don't know. On the occasion, they are such kind politically, education is a separate area. They're living and they start to cultivate their own land. On the occasion, why they are rich? Why it's okay to sacrifice their own land? Especially for the farmer, farm is essential, and without any compensation, they are suddenly deprived. They are even pretty much like 40 years old white farmer. They devote their own land to huge extent, to huge land. On the occasion, why they suddenly deprive after they deprive their own farm? How they live? We never understand. Especially when this context is unkind to a white person. On the occasion, what kind of social welfare support yourself? That kind of situation necessarily happen. That's why we can call it like a deprivation of fundamental right for white farmer. It cannot allow even the extent of international law, even the extent to justification. That's why we believe in terms of principal obligation or practical harm, we can see the strong harm of the white farmers. We want to make a kind of analysis, comparison. Oh, thank you. So they just analyze by misreading this motion. The violence is bad because it causes all in the first place. We have to realize so what is this motion said. This is just a declaration. We are saying that you have to engage the core nuance. Why is this declaration or formation of such a violent relevance is so in the first place is so bad? Let me compare this point. So we believe the character on this debate, in the majority character is the silent majority. The conservative people are to some extent irrelevant because they are anyway don't have mutual exclusion because anyway they have a strong incentive to attack others or anyway they seek literally to attack others. On that occasion, we have to focus on the character of silent majority, how to act. Simple comparison here is that simply even the white majority, like themselves, they hate the potential to be attacked by the others. Comparison here is that in our paradigm, at least if they can compromise to give them money by sacrificing certain portion of your own budget, we can avoid complete possibility to be attacked by others. On the simple comparison, as long as you love yourself, as long as you have a brotherhood, as long as you have a family, why they are actively opting the conflict situation by attacking backers, by you actively create in the war in the first place. We never understand. Character of white people is that they're actually compromised by their national calculation, by national comparison. It's better for yourself to give the money compared to be opting the war situation. That's why this comparison, it doesn't be done their side hard. We can take this way. More to my final point, but before that, open.
So declaration of the violence is a reason of the preemptive strike because of self-defense. Why the declaration of the violence is a safety?
You misabuse. You are too much abuse the word of self-defense. Under the name of self-defense, you cannot justify every single action. Even you declare, I kill you, it doesn't mean you can justify every single action. Even though such things, Twitter or the other say, you kill me, it doesn't mean you can kill you. On top of it, it's simple principle, a simple combat. Even South Africa, the government has said, you are attacked. It does not mean you can justify to attack by using your army. In the first place, it's completely unrealistic. Move on to my final analysis, whether keeping status quo is okay or not. This is a premise of opening opposition because they are claiming that by keeping this status quo, they can make a peaceful negotiation. Without it, there are no any reason to actively oppose this motion. Let me disconstruct this point. What they said is that by keeping this status quo, by sharing the claim of such white people, they can gather sympathy. We have a response here that there are no any interest. People cannot notice this situation in the first place. Let me analyze this point. Why? Simply because we have to analyze the incentive of media. Media are the profit seeker. In this context, for black people the majority, media try to seek follow the mainstream in the society. On the occasion, in this time, white people are it's completely irrelevant issue for the white people because there are no any bias towards white people in the first place. Why media have picked up this issue? Why people try to focus on this issue, even though irrelevant, or even though it's another world issue for the black people in this society. society. On the assessing our paradigm, comparatively better, wiser. Simply because in our paradigm, still such an issue of such black people, no, issue of white people can be the issue for the white people. Because we have to care the potential to be attacked, even your brotherhood or even your black people. On that occasion, in the media who follow your mainstream, especially in the context of such kind of South Africa, the majority of black people exist. On that occasion, of course, in the media have the incentive to care the issue of such kind of this issue because there are potential to of the related to such kind of black people. That's for the reason, keeping the status quo don't have any means to political change, such an incentive change. No, that's why we believe for those reasons we are very proud to propose now.
I thank the previous speaker for his speech. To close the debate, I'd like to call upon the opposition with hear, hear.
May I start? Mr. Speaker, the closing government was too unrealistic because they said they will just declare and something will happen. But we will make a two likely scenario. There's only two scenarios in this debate. Firstly, if they only do just a declaration, what will happen is it is just a substance, right? So what will happen will be like no negotiation will happen. So in that case, there will be no practical outcomes. So we don't get the necessity of this. But second likelihood is the war will actually start, right? We think what happened here is the military power is a lot stronger. If you want to really go against the military power, we think it is unrealistic because we have to get many weapons here. So we don't think there is a practical scenario that white will win over this war or something like that. So we think what closing government did today was just to mix up and make it feel like, oh, what will happen was they will just react to the declarations. But that's actually not the case. So we are very proud to oppose this motion. Three things from my speech. Firstly, I would like to compare the best scenario of the whole government side and our worst case. And at least at that time, if we could show that our case is better, we will already take this case. But secondly, I'm going to deal with the other ideas coming from the closing government, which they told us about, like the white abuse power of the reparation of principle. I don't think which is not important at all. But finally, about opening government, some other cases. So let's make the comparison here. Like even if we take the best case of the closing government or opening government, sometimes to some extent it will succeed. But in the long term, what will happen is very clear. Because what they are going to do is very similar to something like a terrorist, right? They're just taking the radical actions. They'll be framed as, even if they don't want to be cared, but other people will feel that they are just an immoral person. That's the time what bad things will happen. Why is that so? Firstly, when you are framed as a terrorist or an immoral person, what will happen with other person will go against you. This is because they will think this is you against all of the people or something like that. That's the first time negotiation will not happen. Now, why is that bad? In the long terms, and all of the things will be taken away from the white people. The example is here. Like the cases of Muslim in the United States, what is happening? Sometimes they're taking some too radical action. That's the reason why these days they are driven away some of the rights, or they are expunged some of the law in order to protect the Muslims, right? We think that is a more devastating situations. When we compare with the status quo, our worst case, it's just something like look at the South Africa. They're not just abusing the rights of the white people. They can still live. When we compare with the Muslim situations in the States or the South Africa's the status quo, our status quo is not so devastating. When we compare, even with the best case of their scenario, we already take this debate. Yes.
We don't change the motion. We don't banish the word of declaration. Even declaration, you have the touch of instinct of your own body because the vibration is completely harmful to your instinct level.
Thank you for talking about that. If you say you're going to just do the declarations, what will happen, or what we have talked about will be beautiful more. Because the simple thing is, if you just make a declaration, what will the actual scenario here is something like economists will talk about the situations, or other international news will show about this situation, right? That's the first time other international community will think that white in the South Africa is such a bad person, and they will be framed like that. And that's the reason why Baba's case was really important. As I have already explained, the opening government wanted to say this is just a bad thing. But we have already explained that the reparations to the